This is part 3 in a 4-part series of a landmark and a groundbreaking sefer in Teshuva called Teshuva of Kook. It's a very hard sefer to read. You have to work very, very hard at it. I think it was Rabbi who said you have to read the sefer unlimitedly, and I've read it several times just to be able to articulate my thoughts and collect. It's a broad, sweeping, I wouldn't say panoramic, it's a cosmological. It addresses the entire reality, its relationship with Hashem, al pi Kabbalah, through Kabbalistic ideas, and how that impacts Teshuva. In the first session, the first shiur, we spoke about the Teshuva of the entire reality, of all the cosmos. All of cosmos wasn't just created by Hashem, but it stems from Hashem. However, it wants to return to its original state of unity with Hashem, non-divisibility, non-physicality, infinity, and eternity. So there's always this longing, an innate, metaphysical, undetectable yearning called a ratzon to return to a greater state of alignment and synchronicity with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's called Teshuva of the entire reality. In the second shiur, we saw, well, how does this affect human Teshuva? Because human beings are different in 2 ways. One is volition, 2 is activism. Volition, excuse me, they're the only ones who can make a choice. Reality can't make a choice. It's this instinct that drives reality. Human beings make a choice. Second of all, human beings affect the entire process, because what happens on the lowest level on planet Earth isn't just affected by upper worlds, but reverses and affects those upper worlds. And therefore, our Teshuva doesn't just affect our own personal alignment with Hashem, because that's what Teshuva is, not just improvement, but it's improvement so I can be better in sync with the one reality, which is the alignment of the entire world with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it also affects, as the Gemara says, Yachid Sheshav, Mochelin Lo, Ulakol Olam. Not just human beings, but all of reality. We talked a little bit about human Teshuva in this context. Okay, how does this affect Teshuva? Now that I know about this cosmic Teshuva, excuse me, now that I know about human Teshuva, it's now Erev Yom Kippur. I'm sitting down, I'm thinking of Rav Kook. What's different? What's changed? How do I put my finger on it? The first 2 shiurim were very abstract, but what does it do to Teshuva? I think there are 3 impacts to Teshuva that are Rot HaTeshuva, at least 3, but I tried to pick not just the most central 3, but the 3 that I think are sequentially related. Okay? Teshuva, of course, is all integrated, whether it's this cosmic shift to become more aligned with Hashem, or whether it's me under my talis saying vidui for a particular sin of Monday at 2:30. As Rav Kook writes in Perek Daled, Siman Gimel, HaTeshuva HaKlalit, there's overarching cosmological Teshuva, Shehi Ilui Ha'olam V'tikuno, advancing the cosmos towards a higher state of unity with Hashem. Ve'ateshuva pratit, my own silent, specific Teshuva. Hanogas li'ishiyot ha'pratit shel kol echad v'echad, everyone's private Teshuva. Ad kidei dakot ha'pratim shel tikunei ha'teshuva miyuchadim. All of those are one integrated Teshuva. So my Teshuva and the cosmic surge towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one. So how does that affect my Teshuva? So I would say 3 things. Inevitability, confidence, and joy. Let's start with inevitability. Teshuva is baked in to reality. The core surge and yearning of our world is to return, not morally, planets don't perform chatayim, but to return to a state of unity and alignment with Hashem, which they're not, because by being created, by definition, they become different from Hashem. But Hashem baked it into reality. It's the Yesod HaOlam, it's Kadma Li'olam, which means that there's a certain predeterminism and predestined conclusion that the world will one day restore itself, because that's how Hashem created the universe. It's beyond me. I'm just part of a small little world in the bottom of 4 worlds. So Hashem created a world which inevitably, typically when we think of Teshuva, we think of uncertainty, we think of doubt. Will Hashem accept my Teshuva? Will Hashem grant me mechila, slicha, v'chapara? Rav Kook changes the game. It is happening. It is inevitable. It's bound to occur. There's no drama here. There's no uncertainty. As he writes, Perek Hey, Siman Gimel, Ha'olam, Muchrachu, Lavo, Lidei, Teshuva Shlema. It is inevitable. It has to happen. Ein ha'olam davar omed al matzav echad. The world is not static. Ki im holechu mitpateach. It's in a constant state of evolution, and that evolution is toward a state of Teshuva. V'hitpatchut hamitit hashlema muchrachati laviyat habriyat hagmor. It has to lead to fully restored and fully healthy alignment with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It has to happen because there is no other reality. All reality stems from Hashem. So if you're aligned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His will, and you're unified at some level, then you exist. If you detach yourself and sever yourself, you can exist for a generation or for a few hundred years, maybe a few thousand years. But there's no sustainability. There's no perpetuity. Because it's not a moral decision to be a kind person or a cruel person. It is a cosmological decision to align yourself with the only lane of reality, and that's a lane that stems from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's aligned and synchronized with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or it's a one-lane highway. If you're not in the lane, you're not on the highway. That's what he writes in Perek Vav, Siman Dalid, HaMachala, the illness, Shel Shichachat HaOlam HaEloki, of ignoring and forgetting the world of Hashem. The powerful words, right? We don't live in a religious world, but Kook gave us lenses to see the world differently. It cannot take root in human nature. You know what it's like? Fascinating metaphor. Go to a little pond or a little river and muddy the water a little bit. So the water will remain muddy for a minute, maybe 10 minutes, but the mud won't remain. It can't. It's just washed away because there's a stream of fresh water. Nachalitan, and Nachal is constantly streaming, snow is constantly melting. That muddiness or muddled reality can't be sustained. So that's a dramatic shift in Teshuva. Teshuva has to occur. Or as he writes in Perek Vav, Siman Beis, Bi'omek ha'havaya, at the depth of reality, shel ha'chayim ha'mitziutiyim, of our world and its reality, munachat ha'tshuva. Teshuva is at the core of our reality. Because it was created before the world. Even before you sin, you're walking down the street and you sin, the tshuva is there, because tshuva is baked into our world. So tshuva is a response to a sin that you have to generate on Yom Kippur by thinking about your flaws and trying to recover. Tshuva is a shemesh of tshuva, a rota tshuva. It's constantly rays that are emanating, constant search of the universe, and it has to happen. Al-Kain, listen to these words. Ein davar batuach ba'olam kimo tshuva. There's nothing more certain than tshuva. I don't think anyone outside of Kook would have said that. There's nothing more certain than tshuva. Of course tshuva is uncertain. You have to make a decision. Okay, you make a decision whether to tap into that certainty. But that certainty exists independent of you. And you know what? If you don't tap into it, you don't exist. Now, obviously you may exist for a century, but you're not aligned with the one root of reality. And therefore, Sof HaKol. Rav Kook writes, Sof HaKol in Perek Vav, Siman Beis, Sof HaKol, Lashuv Latikun. That's the first shift. Teshuva is not uncertain, who knows, maybe. It is a reality, it is definite, it is inevitable, it is inescapable. Because of that, part two, you should approach Teshuva not with fear only, and with trepidation only, and with consternation only, and with anxiety only, but with confidence. And that's the emotion that Rav Kook inserted. And that's why in that letter that I mentioned in the first shir, he was so concerned about getting it right, because he didn't want to eliminate the classic emotions of tshuva, of fear and trepidation and constant. He wanted to provide another layer to give our tshuva lift. And how do you write a sefer? And how do you calibrate between all these conflicting emotions? Well, that's what tshuva is. It's a range, it's a kaleidoscope of emotions. But all of a sudden, he writes in Perek Zayin, Siman Hey, listen to this. Mikol makom, kivan shaharayon kashur l'kedusha v'lechevetz hatshuva. Since this idea of performing tshuva is merely connecting you and assimilating you with this cosmological movement that's happening anyway, there's nothing to be afraid about. Vadai, Yasmin HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Kol Hadracham. Hashem will make it happen, because it's like putting a plug into a socket. There's just nothing to be afraid about. They're made for one another. 2 prongs, there's 3 prongs, go into the 3 holes. And if you don't put it into the socket, there's no electricity. Nothing happens. So you're not afraid to don't do it when your hands are wet, but afraid to put a plug into the socket. You're just making it belong. And that's why you have absolute confidence, as he writes in Perek Zayin, Siman Vav, Tzrichim lahamik miyar b'emunas hatshuva. Emunas hatshuva. There's an emunah in tshuva. V'lios batuach. Shebehiro tshuva levad, just by thinking tshuva, gam kein mitaknim harbeas atzmo ve'et olam. You're repairing yourself and the cosmos. And I don't have time to talk about how Rav Kook altered hirhara tshuva, but there's a lot to discuss about how hirhara tshuva is different than hirhara tshuva in the classic sense. So the first shift is, it's inevitable, not uncertain, no drama. Number two is, should be confident because it's a reality that's baked in or built into our universe. And therefore, and that's where the Sefer gets its name, the emotions of tshuva, because it's inevitable and you approach it with confidence, are not just the typical emotions, sadness, gloom, mourning, tears, frustration, that entire bucket list of sad, mournful, remorseful emotions, joy, health, serenity, comfort, belonging, things make sense to me. And standing in tshuva is an experience of lightness, or light, not darkness. And that's really the core revolution of Rav Kook. Writing a sefer that paints tshuva as light and radiance and happiness, belonging, and not dark and gloomy and sad. Meaningful, and don't run away from those emotions, don't avoid those emotions because the two interact, but restoring that sense of gedola tshuva, that series of gedola tshuva. Gedola doesn't just mean it's important, it's marvelous, it's splendid, it's radiant. Tshuva is arota tshuva. So for example, compare arota tshuva to David HaMelech tshuva. I don't think David HaMelech read Rav Kook. I say that tongue in cheek. Of course he didn't read Rav Kook. But his tshuva doesn't speak Rav Kook's tshuva. When you read Parak Lamed Ches, when you read Parak Nun Aleph, it's very dark, it's very gothic, it's very sad, it's very alone, it's very detached, it's very frustrating. And those are such important emotions of tshuva. Then you read Rav Kook, it's a whole different landscape. You're standing in front of the sun, realigning yourself with reality, being sustained by what sustains the entire universe, aligning yourself with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What greater joy than the light and the radiance of tshuva?